Hey, what's up, everyone? How are you guys all doing today? My name is Alec,
My name is Alex.
and welcome to the Alec and Alex Fantasy Experience. Sorry about last week. We took a week off because we are students, and yeah, we kind of got destroyed by all of our professors convened and said, you know what? The fantasy
Yeah.
assholes of the world need an up week, so let's make sure Alec and Alex's loyal viewers don't get the help they deserve.
They said our videos were too good. They said we need them to stop focusing on their videos for a couple days and focus on their work. Ruben and I mean, we always focus on our work.
We
But
do.
but sometimes, fantasy takes precedent. Not when your teams play as badly as mine did this week, though, Walrus.
Yeah, mine actually went flawless. I 4-0 in all four of my leagues for the first time this
Hey,
year, and it puts me 6-6 on the season, back to
proud of you.
relevancy. So,
Hey, proud of you, big guy.
as someone who owns either Jamal Charles or Adrian Peterson on all of his teams, I'm happy to be at 500.
Hey, man. I mean, look, we there's a lot to talk about. This is obviously the waiver video, but you mentioned this to me, and you were right about it. If you took a running back in the first round,
If you took a
probably
running back in the
probably
first
not good.
round that
Probably not good.
wasn't Marshawn Lynch, you're
Yeah,
probably pretty upset with it. So keep in mind, almost everyone else who took a running back got screwed.
got
And
hosed.
all of a sudden, the dude who took Peyton Manning third in my league is looking rather smart.
Yeah, and I mean the Calvin Johnson, Jimmy Graham guys, they look good too.
Yeah, for sure. But without further ado,
Yeah, let's
none
get
of
to
those
it.
guys are on the waiver wire. I know that was probably pretty confusing. You were
Wait,
expecting
well, of
guys.
course, let me drop a quick tip. If Calvin Johnson's on the waiver wire, think about adding him.
You know, if I see Jimmy Graham on the waiver wire,
Think
I'm
about it.
only going to add him
Think
if
about it.
our first guy, Larry Donald, isn't already there.
Whoa. Hey, Walrus, how about my Giants?
Yo, how about that segue, asshole?
Yeah, hey, all right, sorry. This is a great segue.
I'm sorry, that was
No, it's
uncalled.
okay.
I didn't
Hey, I
mean
don't
to.
mind, man. I don't mind.
That
Larry
was
Donald.
very harsh. I'm
No, it's
sorry. Are
cool.
we still
Hey,
friends?
listen. You're allowing me to talk about Larry Donald. We're still friends.
Thank God. Yeah, you
But
can even talk about Rashad Jennings a little if you want to.
hey, Rashad 4K.
All right, go
I'm
back to Larry Donald. I changed
no,
my
but
mind.
Larry Donald is Walrus and I are always advising you to go for tight ends when you can. And the way the tight end position works, if you're getting a guy who's going to average 7 or 8 points a week, that's pretty good for the tight end position. And
That is startable.
yeah, Larry Donald through 3 weeks has 9.5 points. He averages 9.5 points. And, it could have been more last week. He had 6 catches for 45 yards on 6 targets. And he did have a fumble. So, that was the reason his point total is a little bit lower. But, yeah, I mean, I like Larry Donald. And, frankly, Walrus, I think the New York Giants offense will look better. It did look a lot better against Houston.
Hmm.
So I think this is an offense you can buy low on a little bit, especially, a guy like Victor Cruz. I think the needle's pointing upward for him, but especially, Larry Donald, who has so far proven himself to be an integral part of the Giants offense. Nothing I expected, I would say, at the beginning of the year, but, the Giants have a history of having a pretty consistent point output at the tight end position, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we all remember. I'm reaching real far
Kevin
back.
Boss? King Kevin
No, no,
Boss?
after Kevin Balls, Jake Ballard,
Oh, Jake Ballard, yeah,
reaching
of
real
course.
far back. Yeah, all of these guys had some kind of fringe tight end one fantasy value because they just seem to get targets. And if you're getting 5+ targets a game and you catch a high percent of them, you're going to be valuable. And the fact of the matter is, there are only like 8 tight ends that are definitive starts. And the
Yeah,
fact of the matter is, if you don't own one of them, there's a good chance that you're going to consider Larry Donald week in, week out.
yeah, I agree with you.
I would pick him up. Worst case scenario, one of those top tight ends goes down, and you've got a great trade chip on your bench.
Yeah, and I mean you have a very juicy matchup next week in Washington. So things look
So
good for
juicy.
for Larry Donald.
Yum. All right, moving on. We've got Captain Kirk Cousins.
Walrus,
Yeah, you
Walrus.
like that.
What do you
Captain
do you
Kirk.
do you like do you like Captain Kirk, Walrus?
The fictional character or Kirk Cousins?
Both, both.
I think Captain Kirk was excellent in the movies, but subpar in the TV shows.
Oh wow, hot take, very hot take.
Yeah.
Put your gloves on. It's very hot.
Kirk Cousins, on the other
Yeah,
hand.
yeah. Me and my
Um,
cousins, you and your cousins.
Yeah, I really don't know if he's going to be the long-term starter in Washington because, yes, it does seem like RG3 will return before the season's over. Did you see that? Out
Yeah,
6 to 8?
yeah, he should be back. Although I can't imagine they'd start Cousins over RG3, but
So here's what I
so far
say.
this year he has been better, right?
Here's what I say.
Yeah, go for it.
If when RG3 returns, Washington is 500 or better,
Yeah.
I predict they let him stay and at least fight for his job. I think if they have a losing record, RG3 is reinserted.
Is this like remember a couple years ago the Colin Kaepernick, Alex Smith thing?
It's exactly like it, except
Oh.
Kirk Cousins' ceiling is so much lower than Kaepernick.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's almost kind of the inverse, right? Because
Yeah.
Cousins, Griffin
Cousins
is
is
more
the safer
explosive guy.
one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But nonetheless, in the short term, Kirk Cousins is utilizing those weapons in Washington way more effectively than RG3 was. So, one, totally outside of picking up Kirk, if you're an owner of Deshaun Jackson, Pierre Garçon, and even to a less extent Andre Roberts, this seems to be good for you because he's, at least in the little we saw him, he has been effective. But just in general, from what we've seen, it looks like he's a borderline top 15 fantasy option.
No, I don't disagree. I mean,
you're not starting him, but
yeah, so many of the things I read about Kirk Cousins are negative, but at a certain point, maybe negative in terms of his actual ability to play quarterback in the NFL, but he puts up fantasy points, and he kind of has consistently throughout his career. Whenever he's gotten time, he's been a good fantasy player. He should be owned in 2 quarterback leagues. Absolutely should be owned. Should be started in 2 quarterback leagues.
And he's a pretty good backup.
And if you're gonna have a quarterback on your bench, he's, I think, probably one of the 3 or 4 first guys.
I don't know about that quite as much, just because you don't know if he's going to be relevant on your bench for that long if RG3 comes back. But great bye week fill-in, and the one thing I'll say is great weapons have been known to make bad quarterbacks look good. So
Matt Castle,
hell, maybe even Josh McCown last year.
Call. Yeah, hey.
Yeah, so
I mean, Walrus, Josh McCown certainly looks bad this year.
Yeah, and the only difference I see is that he's not throwing to Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey, so it must have been the weapons.
Yeah, although he is throwing to Vincent Jackson and the anonymous Mike Evans.
I
know. Big A on the Tampa Bay Bucks, Walrus. But let's move. This is. Oh, and also, by the way, good thing about Cousins next week is he has the New York Giants, who, despite being probably the best team in the NFL right now, they don't have a great pass defense.
The best team in the NFL with the best running back.
Yeah, with the best running back, also the best quarterback, who's going to complete 90% of his passes. You heard it here first. All right, moving right along. Walrus, this is a very NFC East heavy video for us.
Yeah, we're going back. Wow, I actually just realized. We'll break away from that tradition because I don't think I could ever sit for 20 minutes talking about strictly the NFC East.
I mean, that's my division, and I hate it.
Yeah, I could talk about the Eagles for that long, but that's about it. Everything
we
else
love the
makes
Eagles.
Me sad.
Speaking of the Eagles, Walrus, what do you think about Jordan Matthews?
Jordan Matthews is looking to move ahead of Riley Cooper on the Eagles wide receiver depth chart and be right behind Jeremy Maclin for targets on the team, or at least right up there with Ertz. He should have some serious value. He was great this past week, and as you were telling me earlier, he nearly had a big week 1 as well.
Yeah, I read I don't remember his name, but there's a guy who writes for one of the Philly papers who does kind of like a game film breakdown, and he was talking about how week 1 the Eagles could have scored a whole lot more points than they ended up scoring, and they did score a lot in that game anyway, but he said that Foles left a bunch of plays on the field, that there were a couple, Hail Mary routes across the middle that Foles missed. Foles just, didn't make the throws, and both of the throws that he highlighted were to Jordan Matthews.
Mm-hmm.
So he was saying that, if Foles had made those throws, you'd add maybe 150 yards to his total at the end of the day.
They were both like 75 yarders?
Well, they were, probably both not 75. I guess if
maybe
you added
100 yards, though.
Yeah, total. I'd say probably about 100. I mean, I guess if you added the other throws he missed as well. But, that's neither here nor there. Jordan Matthews was probably pretty close to having 2 pretty long touchdowns week 1. And guess what? He had 2 touchdowns in week 3. And Walrus, I think this is one of those times you bet on the offense being good, right?
Yeah, I absolutely think that's the case. Riley Cooper simply has not looked impressive so far, so this is a great opportunity for Jordan Matthews to move up. And with how he played yesterday, or however many days ago it is when you're watching this, I definitely think that that trend is going to continue. And yeah, Nick Foles looked insane. When that offense is moving, they can get a lot of points on the board, both in real life and fantasy. So yeah, I'm all in on investing in that offense, and Jordan Matthews is probably your best bet as far as doing that right now.
Yeah, I agree. Although, man, Jeremy Maclin.
Until he gets injured. Moving on, speaking of injuries, we go to the San Diego backfield where we've got Donald Brown. He's a return or an alumni of our fantasy pickup videos. Last year when he was on the Colts, we told you to pick him up, and once again, the bell is ringing for Donald Brown. Ryan Matthews was injured during week 2, I want to say. It was week 1 or 2.
Yeah, it was week 2.
Yeah, and nonetheless, he is still going to be out for a few more weeks, and Danny Woodhead is now out for the season, so all of a sudden Donald Brown is, at least for the time being, the premier back, and he'll at worst be the number 2 back, and as we saw last year, he has some value.
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about this. We think the Chargers are one of probably the 5 or 6 best teams in the NFL. Right, Walrus?
Given that the Packers, Saints, and Patriots
are all very disappointing.
I'd put all 3 of those below them. Yeah, I think the Chargers are quite possibly a top 5 team right now.
So you look at that, and you look at their strength, their definitive strength being offense. They're not a great defensive team. And they're a very good offensive team, and a lot of their offensive success last year was predicated on the run. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, they moved to that West Coast scheme, so, more accuracy from Phillip Rivers and, great receiving weapons as well. But a lot of what they did revolved around the run, and they need somebody to run the ball.
And he's not a bad option.
Right, and he's proven to be competent in all of the stints he's had. So, we were saying a few weeks ago that it was crazy that they signed Donald Brown. It didn't really make a lot of sense. The opportunity cost of signing him over signing someone at a position they really needed. But, it turns out like it might go okay for them.
It's like they looked into their crystal ball, saw Ryan Matthews go down as he always does, but the Woodhead injury, that's when they're like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Time to get Donald Brown.
Yeah, I mean, look, this past week, not great. But he did have 31 rushes, which is kind of crazy. He had 31 rushes only for 62 yards, but active in the passing game as usual.
Hey, that was Donald Brown, yards per carry than LaShawn McCoy had.
Yep, there you go. Donald Brown should be owned in every league. And Walrus, what do you look at him for next week? Like a flex? High-end flex?
I think he's middle of the pack flex. Again, he's not an elite talent running back, but he's a competent one on a good offense. And you hope that maybe he gets a few goal line carries, maybe breaks out for like a 10-plus yard run. But yeah, he's got some great value.
I could not agree more, Walrus. I think he's a good pickup.
Yeah, we've got one last sort of one. This is tentative, not an official pickup suggestion. But Brian Quick has looked good. He's looked quick.
I mean, oh boy, here we go. Yeah, I mean, hey, look, you can't complain with the numbers. His lowest point week was 7 in week 2. You'll take 7 points, and I wouldn't expect you're looking at Brian Quick probably to be your flex, and he's put up really consistent numbers.
He's put up flex numbers.
He has
consistently
he's put up maybe even a little better than flex numbers. I listen. I was pretty high on Brian Quick when we were talking about starting to maybe include him in our video this week. And then I thought about Austin Davis. So now I'm not as high on Brian Quick.
That said,
he should be owned. He absolutely should be owned.
I mean, I don't know if I'm quite that excited about it. And whoa, there's a big insect in my room. I am terrified.
Just kill it. Just use it.
I'm busy. I'm talking football.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm also talking football.
Wow, at least you don't have a bug bothering you.
Oh, thank God.
An insect, no bugs, nonetheless.
There are no bugs in Maine.
Nice. Anyway, so yeah, Brian Quick, the issue is, one, like, this is kind of out of nowhere. He's been in the NFL a few years now, and he's been pretty disappointing until now. But two, yeah, we don't know if Austin Davis is like an actually competent quarterback. The defenses that Brian Quick has been able to do this against, not necessarily elite.
You could perhaps even say that they're pretty bad. Although Minnesota's defense isn't
Minnesota's
terrible.
defense is fine.
They're pretty good.
Tampa's looks pretty bad, and
Tampa's
is definitely bad. So.
And Dallas is even more awful.
If you want to get Brian Quick as a potential high upside guy going forward, go ahead. I would be a little hesitant, although one more week of 8+ points, and I'm in.
Walrus, but you would say Jordan Matthews over Brian Quick, right?
I would say, yeah. I would say if you need any of these guys or their positions that we also named today, I would pick them over Brian Quick.
Yeah, I agree. Although, you could do worse. You could do worse than Brian Quick. Like, for instance,
Brian Slow. You don't want to take Brian Slow. His last name is Slow, after all.
Oh, is it? That was the joke? I didn't know that was the
joke. Just making it clear for all the folks back home who, I don't know, English isn't their first language or something.
No, I understand. And those folks are happy, and they're going to tune into the next video.
Those international fantasy football fans.
That's a little thing called building a fan base, Walrus.
Anyway, guys, thank you for listening in. That's it for our fantasy pickups for this week. If you enjoyed, leave a like, and let us know if you have any questions. Comment section, Twitter, Facebook, all of the above are great options.
Or just send direct mail to Larry Donnell's home.
We'll see if we can find that P.O. box by the next video.
Yeah, do that.
Anyway, my name is Alec.
My name is Alex.
And we will see you next time.